All right. With that, I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Dunsmuir City Council for March 7th, 2024 to order at 6:01 p.m. Everyone's please stand for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We need to do a roll call for.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Here.
Councilmember Keisler.
Here.
Councilmember Bryan.
Present.
Councilmember Zucchini. Here. Mayor Spann.
Here.
No, that's right.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, special presentation and announcements, which today we have one from Brian Chinoni for grant funding opportunities for emergency services.
Glad to see you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Owen Moline. I'm here representing Brian Chinoni on behalf of Siskiyou County Office of Emergency Services. And I'm here to talk about the California Wildfire Mitigation Program. So this program is, so as part of State of California's initiative to strengthen community-wide resilience against wildfires, the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, has partnered with the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, to develop a community home hardening program to retrofit, harden, and create defensible space for homes at risk to wildfires, with a focus on high social vulnerability communities and providing financial assistance for local or for low and moderate income households. The community home hardening concept comes from the latest fire science. The more homes hardened in a community, the lower the risk of wildfire impacts. Due to Dunsmuir's high fire severity rating and overall risk, we've decided that the Cal OES grant funds will be focused on the city and surrounding areas. Shasta Valley Resources Conservation District, Dan Blessing and Rod Dowser are going to be the ones applying for this grant with Siskiyou OES support. A couple other key players we have on this: Siskiyou County Community Development Director Rick Dean, Siskiyou County Administration Deputy CIO Sherry Lawson, myself, Brian Chinoni, my director with Siskiyou OES. This program involves providing state and federal funding to implement residential retrofits and defensible space measures to mitigate wildfire impacts in select communities across the state. And Siskiyou OES is in the process right now of identifying high priority areas in Dunsmuir and surrounding areas. This program is going to work closely in those areas to establish some local home hardening programs. We would like to serve the socially vulnerable with this program, and we are eager to receive the support from the City Council. Any questions? I talked a little fast, it was a lot.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
talking to the mic. Oh,
Yes, sir.
that was fast. The first part, could I get your last name, brother?
Sorry, Cabo Dalmolin, CABODALMOLIN.
Yeah, I was good. Yeah, I really didn't know you. Yeah, okay. You mentioned that. You mentioned that this is a program to where just jump right to it. You're gonna help people that ain't got money fix up and fireproof their properties. Is that correct? In a lump sum?
So the finer details of how that's going to work are still being worked out.
Well, this is the idea.
That the idea is that we're going to be able to come in and you'll have contractors come in and retrofit homes to make them more resilient against fire, work on defensible space around the homes. That's working.
Okay.
Is this something that would be going through our Fire Safe Council? Because they're the ones that are working on getting all the different word out and all the documents signed for people to get their initial survey done. Is this part of that whole process?
I will have to confirm that with Brian, but I believe that they'd be working with us.
Maybe Bruce could introduce you to who he's talking about.
I'll get in touch with you on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions? Staff comments or anything?
No.
No?
Michael?
Thank you so much for the
Thank
presentation.
you for your time.
And there wasn't any action. Well, no, it's not.
No.
Yeah, all right. With that, we will move on to item number 4, public comment. Public comment is open to any member of the public who would like to speak to any business relating to the city. If it is relating to anything that is under either old business or new business, which tonight is the Cosmont Downtown Revitalization Project. There will be a separate public comment time for you to make public comments specifically for that item at that time. Every member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. I will give anyone who is speaking a 30-second warning before their time is up. And if you please optionally state your name and address for the record, that is much appreciated. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand. We will do the people in the room first, then go to Zoom, and then, yeah. So if anyone would like to speak, please line up behind the podium.
Hello, Karen O'Quinn, 5714 Dunsmuir Avenue. I wanted to let the council know that our lighting project is now complete. And the lighting in the library is much improved. So thank you again. Tony and Meyer Plumbing are working on the urinal issue. And hopefully that will be repaired very soon. I also wanted to let you know that the Bill Meese event about Castle Crabs is going to have an encore presentation. And that's going to be on March 16th, which is a Saturday at 2 o'clock. So those of you that couldn't attend before, or we were definitely overcrowded, please come. And this is mainly just for Dunsmuir folks and people who couldn't hear and couldn't see during the last event.
That's the library.
At the library, 2 o'clock. Wondering if there's any date yet for roof repair or replacement. I know you guys are working hard on it, but we're still having some leak issues. And it sure would be nice to have a date to focus our positive attention on. We're also hoping that the finance committee will incorporate funding for the library in the city budget, in the next city budget. So if y'all keep that in mind, we would really appreciate it. And I'm going to pass this around. This is actually a little poster that we have for the releases again. Thank you.
Thank you.
It
Mhm.
would be possible. For us to get that lady in hand. She has struggled with this library for so many years. And I personally think that her, Karen. Basically, the patience in dealing with the bureaucratic stuff.
And then anyone else who'd like to make a public comment, please come up to the podium.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff and members of the public, my name is Peter Art. I live at 5859 Sacramento Avenue. Mr. Mayor, I would like to address item 12, future agenda items. Specifically, the second bulleted item, Historic Commission Reformation and or Review. I've spoken on this topic before. As long as this stays as a future agenda item, it doesn't do anybody any good. 10 years ago in 2014, there was a joint meeting. I think Mr. Keisler was mayor at the time. All the members of the planning commission, all the members of the city council sat in this chamber and agreed unanimously after hearing the uncontested testimony of Ron McLeod, who spoke for almost 20 minutes about the history of our city, that the historic district has suffered over the last 20 years. that the arrangement of having two members of the planning commission with no power whatsoever to oversee the historic district has not worked. When we get to the Cosmot report, all 130 pages of it, it is replete with strategies for strengthening the oversight and management of our historic district. And it really is telling all of us what we already knew, but will this finally cause you and the leadership of the city with the city manager to consider one of two options? One, the 5-member oversight committee that Ron McLeod said worked perfectly well until the city backed off and stopped enforcing the protective ordinance for the Dunsmuir Historic District. Or, as the Cosmot report points out, there are at least 4 different district options. You could do a historic district, you could do a business improvement district, you could do this, you could do that. It is my hope in the next 30 days, you will work with the leadership of the planning commission and have a joint meeting of the planning commission and the city council. I hope the planning commission doesn't have to pay for their copies of the Cosmot, but you'll just give them one for free. And let's have a discussion about moving our community forward, saving the historic district and rebuilding our downtown economy. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone else in person would like to speak, please come up to the podium. Seeing no one, if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak tonight, please raise your hand. Seeing no one, I will close public comment for this evening. All right, and with that, we will move on to staff comments, and we will start with Sergeant Keith.
Thank you, Mayor. The sheriff's office doesn't have anything of note to report this evening. I would ask the public to remember that we are barely in March. I anticipate that a few months of you that live here more winter weather ahead. You can help our public works people help you, and if you're able, get your vehicles off the road when snowing conditions exist. It would help them immensely if they could actually plow the whole road and not a serpentine fashion of parked cars. And in the long run, I've preached this before. House fires, structure fires, they do occur in the winter months, and they can be even more challenging based on the road conditions and the access to them. Not to mention the medical emergencies and other things. So if we keep these streets open for emergency purposes and your everyday convenience, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant. Mr. Reeves.
All right, so Karen, pray for good weather. We need 5 days of good weather. It is planned for Monday. So we have been waiting and waiting and waiting and since December to get them there, but we can never seem to get 5 good days of weather. So that's full replacement. So.
Thank you.
Okay, also, I met, Blake and I met with MSW, our consultant for solid waste rate study. And they're getting close, so hopefully we can bring it to committee here by the end of the month. On Tuesday, I got quiet. On Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I will be traveling to Reading to meet with Pace Engineering. We have approximately 11 projects currently in process with them, and so trying to save some time or save some money from the Pace side. So Dennis and I will be down there the entire day, going through project by project to ensure we're on track for this upcoming construction cycle. I believe bid opening for 2 projects tomorrow, correct? And then that's all I have. The finance committee got moved to the 18th, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, with that, Bruce, would you like to start us off today?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I wanted to point out again a couple of events that are coming up. You may know that the Ford family has a foundation that helps support all the small communities that once used to have wood mills in town like we do. And I'm in the process right now of reaching out to them to get support for 2 different events. One of them is called Building Dunsmuir's Future. It's something that the Ford Family Institute, working with the Siskiyou Revitalization Network and the Economic Development Council, put on in 2018. We've got all the materials from that. This past Monday, we met with Corey Hayden from EDC, who was one of the facilitators for that, and she's really excited about how far we've taken everything, and we're ready to roll on that. So that's April 20th from 9:30 to 2:30. And then following up in the month of May, we wanted to originally have this at the same time, but you may know that the ceiling in the high school gymnasium has been condemned, so we can't have it there. We're going to have the volunteer fair, the 2nd annual volunteer fair on May 19th. That's a Sunday from 1 to 4. Another thing that I'm working on, we had this joint meeting with Parks and Recs. And during that meeting, I brought up the idea of working with Mount Shasta to bring back an aquatic culture for the youth here in the town. And I think we're going to be working with both the Rotary clubs between Mount Shasta and Dunsmuir. And also I've already contacted the Boys and Girls Club so we can kind of tie into them. But the idea is if we're ever going to be able to have a regular pool, we're going to have lifeguards. And to me, the way to have lifeguards is to start them young. So my goal would be to basically find a way if we could train every school-age children how to swim and then have competitions and things like they used to. So I'll be working that going forward. The other big thing that I wanted to point out is that for about 1.5 years now, we've been working on trying to come up with a new bus system for the county, for South County in particular. And back a year ago, August, the council here unanimously put in 4 unmet needs to the local transportation commission, coming up with the fact that we really don't have a bus system that serves us. I won't go into the details. I've mentioned it several times, but the bottom line is we need an entirely different system. Well, several things are in play right now. Number one, I just became chair of the local transportation commission. And so that's kind of nice being able to work with this. At the same time, earlier this year, I was able to get a graduate student from UCLA as part of their Transportation Institute studies. I think I got that reversed. But the point is, she's been working on developing this system, working with the stage staff, coming up with a system that essentially would give us a bus that would run around in Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, and Weed and Wairika on a half-hour cycle with an express bus going back up and down. I'll be meeting on next Wednesday with Mia Lewis, the student, and the director of the Institute of Transportation Studies to get a first look at what our proposal is going to be. That also will line up with the fact that we're doing something that we should have done as an LTC a long time ago. Right now, the county runs stage. County really has a bias and a limitation of looking at it. We're one of only 2 counties in the whole state that did not have a travel agency beneath the LTC to actually run it and manage that. Well, in July, we're going to have that. We've been taking some consultations and we're going to be coming up with a travel agency. And my hope is this will all come together and we'll be moving towards having a bus system that'll actually serve the South County and give people, especially that can't afford gas and et cetera, a way to get to work, to get to groceries and et cetera. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Katie.
I'll be really quick. Just grant season, there's a lot of grants dropping, so I'm working on a Safe Routes for All grant to keep our ATP plan going. If you don't know what that is, it's an active transportation plan. We passed that, so now we're eligible for a significant amount of funding for bike lanes, sidewalk repairs, and installations, along with other traffic calming measures. And so working on those grant applications. The other piece too is I did request a future agenda item that I'm now working on around the library specifically. Mainly because it is a county library, it's not a city library, and so that limits our ability to apply for grants to assist them. So working on that agenda item to hopefully come back for council consideration in April, potentially May, to talk about that possibility because the state library grants just dropped. And then I'm working on helping staff with the planning RFP that will hopefully come back to council here pretty quickly. And then any other ordinance updates, just to assist staff with that to keep things going. I know one of the things is we did have a request for updates to our cannabis ordinance. So I am working on that, to help staff out, to put that together for those updates, and we'll be hopefully bringing some of that back for planning commission consideration. And I believe that's everything. Oh, and then, the municipal ad hoc committee, should be meeting here in the next 2 weeks, and hoping to work on some of our ordinances that have resulted in some less than great situations regarding code enforcement. So one of the things people need to understand when our code enforcement officer goes out, sometimes he's enforcing city codes that don't make sense. And he doesn't typically have the ability to change those codes. We do, along with the planning commission. And so our first order of business for the municipal code review committee is to look at some of those codes that people have been frustrated with. Specifically some of our setback regulations, storage of RVs and campers, and so taking a look at those ordinances to alleviate some of the frustration people have been feeling around this. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Todd?
That is a big deal. Yeah, I just got a couple. There are some members of the community that complain about vacant empty buildings. But yet, if you want to go look at one of their buildings that are for rent, it's going to cost you $40 just to look at it. These are little things that, there's another person that said that city manager told him it was $3,000 to paint a sign on a historical building. These are things that are scaring people away, not encouraging the town. Just saying. On another note, the Rotary Golf Tournament is coming up, and I will be coming around to businesses with the T signs to see if you want to promote your business with the Rotary. This is a good program. Every dollar goes to support our backpack program. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you. Our kids go home Friday with a backpack, got a little bit of food in there so that they can feed themselves over the weekend so that they don't come to school Monday starving to death. It's sad, but it's true. And this is a great program. I'm 1,000% behind it. I encourage everybody. $50, promote your business. I have people that give me $50 in remembrance of their dead father, and I make a sign. So whatever you want, we'll make you a sign. It's all about the kids. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Vice Mayor Brian?
I think the only. The only important information I have to convey was finance committee, which I'll cover in committee reports. Thank you.
I've only got one quick thing here.
No, sorry. What finance committee? What?
I'll cover it in committee reports.
Oh, okay.
I've only got one quick thing to report here. If anyone's looking for a good dinner on Saturday night, the rigatoni dinner is this weekend. It's a great community event. It's Saturday at what time that's at?
6 o'clock. I thought.
6 o'clock, somewhere around there. Really good food. Randy Aguilar's Chili's, for chili sauciness, really good. But that's over at the Catholic Parish Hall. That's all I've got for this evening. And with that, we will move on.
I did forget, we do have a new business that's opening on Saturday at 3. It's a hat shop. We have a haberdashery. So it's over where the old time tattoo was in the bank building immediately adjacent to Cobra Lily, but they'll be opening up their clothing and hats.
It's called the Golden Stitch.
Yes, I believe so. So if you're looking to also support a new local business, please stop by. Again, they'll be open at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Yeah, a haberdashery.
Right on.
All right, with that, we'll move on to committee reports. Are there any committees that met other than finance? No.
Nope. So finance committee had our second full meeting pretty much devoted to revamping the community promotion program. And built some really good consensus around how to have a fair, streamlined program that works for the mechanisms of the city, works better for the community, maybe actually allows for more people to get involved and use it. We have come up with the basic thought that we need a really strong mission statement that includes all possible uses so people can really understand what it's for. We found with some public comment that people didn't necessarily understand why it was given, when it was given this kind of discretionary. So kind of make it more of an official grant program. There's still some disagreement on, everyone agreed that we needed to demonstrate
community support behind the project or program. But what that should look like, whether it should be, for the highest level, maybe a matching grant. But we love the idea of a tiered system where for maybe lower level grants, the criteria is fairly simple, very user friendly. And then as you get given more, we kind of have a higher threshold of accountability and different metrics for that. So that's a great discussion. Should be coming back to council for full adoption, I would hope in May. Because we're supposed to have a more formal draft of it, go back to finance committee in a couple weeks.
Question?
Yes.
Will that be like a two-step process? First of all, to come up with how we're going to agree to figure out who gets it and then look at the money and parse that out? Is that kind of the way you're looking at it?
Yeah, I think, if I understand it correctly, the basics, we didn't, nothing's been finalized, just a lot of really good conversation. We
Okay.
have a rough kind of draft of some points, but we're gonna actually draft the program. But the basic idea would be, when council passes the budget, they allocate so much in set amounts, like so many $10,000 grants, so many $5,000 grants, so many 2,500 or less, we're still kind of looking at details. And that would just be set based upon budgetary constraints or availability. Then that's what there is to be awarded later on in the year when you do that. But do it well in advance of our budget time, or we're focused on some of the other things, so we don't run into a situation where there's not time to deal with these really important, community programs, because we're busy dealing with our budget and everything. Do you remember the long meetings we've had? Yeah, so the idea would be maybe, and this is just theoretical, but pass our budget when we do, and then, do that maybe 6 months later.
Sounds right. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Appreciate that we actually have to hold here today for an item that's agenda.
Yeah, and we've had great support from the community as far as some of the grant holders have been participating.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 7, approval of the minutes of February 15th, 2024, and the joint meeting of Parks, and Rec from 2/22/24.
I make a motion to.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes.
So in front of you today is a revised version of the joint meeting minutes, so, I don't know if you have time right now to review those, but perhaps we should skip, the approval of those and wait till the next meeting to approve the joint meeting
That's
minutes.
just generally, okay,
Okay. Motion to table until the next meeting.
but we still can't do the February 15th.
Yep.
Correct.
A motion to do the February 15th.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda,
You didn't have a second to motion to table.
I thought it was-
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. Both are approved. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 8, the consent agenda, which is one item today, which is the check register for 210 through 3/1 of
A
2024.
motion to adopt consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. All right, with that, we move on to item number 9, public hearing, of which there is none. So that means we're moving to item number 10. Main reason we're all here this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend we take a moment to have everyone turn around, because otherwise it's going to get really confused as we start going through this. If you want to watch this long presentation, you got to turn your chairs around.
We'll give everyone 1 minute to kind of reorient themselves to where they can see the screen before we start. Item number 8, Cosmont downtown revitalization.
But we're working on another TV going.
You need to be word on the other TV.
Yeah, it was supposed to show up, I don't know, this week, but it got moved to like Friday or something, so unfortunately after the meeting.
Yeah, but I don't think that, I really think nobody will be able to read anything from that corner. That's the problem with that. Because, look at what we're looking at here. So I really think we could put it up here and have it sitting out away from there. That's my thought. I mean, you've got those mounts that will extend it out, so it won't be in line with that. Oh. Just think about that, although if you're over there, being able to, here we go.
All right, and with that, we will start the presentation.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's primarily for Zoom.
Hey, is Mike in on or something?
I can give him Mike a lapel. Here.
His mic is in the heart.
We're gonna trade off, so.
Can you set that thing on the table, we'll fix it? Yeah.
This is Ken, my name's Ken Hira with Cosmont Companies. And I'm here with my colleague, Bobby Valenti, and we're gonna both make a summary presentation of a longer report, Mr. Mayor and for the council. We were here last, end of summer, early fall, at least talk assignment about strategy. We then came in the fall, November to conduct a community workshop and get lots of feedback. We were actually very, very pleased with the tremendous amount of feedback from stakeholders, and community members. And then we're here tonight to present the revitalization strategy. And I would still call this a step in a process. And the process being what becomes important from this is implementation strategies and actually taking steps and action. And that will come from your direction and discussion. So having said that, let me, I'll start and give a little bit of a big picture on our group and our role here. The Cosmont Companies has been in business for about 37 years as an economic development advisor and a real estate advisor, working with cities on different strategies for economic development and various public-private transactions, business attraction, et cetera. We've worked with lots of cities, small and large, across California. We've named a few, and we've got cities that, have got a few thousand people in them. We've got cities that we've worked with that have thousands and thousands of people in them. And what's fascinating is each one of those cities are unique. And sometimes we'll do a strategy or an economic development plan for a particular city. And you would think you could just change the name at the top of the report and just reissue it. Not even close, because each one of the communities that we work with and for are unique. And your community is no different, it's unique, and yet what we find is similar issues. If it's vacancy, if it's economic development, if it's revenues, if it's post-pandemic, sustainability, if it's real estate values, if it's economic development tools, we find that we can apply some of these things that we've learned over the years to different communities. But again, the communities are quite unique. And so this is a strategy that's meant to be commensurate for your strengths and weaknesses and challenges and opportunities. We have a lot of assistants doing these kinds of things, but I will also tell you that there is just no silver bullet. We have lots of communities that have raised their hand and said, hey, if we have vacancy, we have challenges, we need some guidance on economic development strategies or revitalization, and it's a process. So that's what we're here to continue to work with you all on. And there's different tools, so we'll get into some of those. The city, along with the Siskiyou Economic Development Council, was involved in this request for qualifications. We responded to it, and we were chosen by you all and the group to prepare the strategy. It's trying to help with market conditions, evaluating economic development opportunities, looking at your economic development opportunities, which is mainly driven by the downtown as a desire to revitalize it. We also look at other opportunity sites, frankly, because it made sense as well. But you have a lot of shifts in preferences of the consumer and investors and local government, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. Development and implementation of this requires lots of community participation. And like I said before, I'm very, very pleased. We've summarized that participation. And we've taken that into consideration because it's essential, because those are bright ideas. There are highlights of things that are good. There are highlights of things that are challenges. And if it's not a community-based strategy and plan, generally doesn't work. So just to touch for a second on a big picture set of topics. The consumer today is really driving so much of the decision making that leadership at the local government level have to make. It's driving decisions that private investors. The consumer is very dynamic. Their preferences are quality of life, cost of living, housing, services, goods. You know, they want things, we and they want things, you know, now, and they want what their preferences are, in life today. Investors have to be driven by different technologies, capital markets, shifting demands, supply chain anomalies, different work patterns have taken place. So there's a different dynamic there that investors in the private sector are facing. And by the way, public sector needs private sector for investment. Then on the flip side, the private sectors need to understand how important it is to collaborate with municipalities. So we have that discussion often between the public and private projects that we work on. Local governments, of course, are being driven by residents and employers, but clearly a lot of new state policies are driving a lot of what cities are facing. Whether there's tension between those decisions or not, housing has become pretty critical in terms of a state priority. And we're involved in that. So real quick, you know, something that I talk a lot about, I've been talking about it for a few years, is this sort of land use revolution. Every asset class has changed. I have a strong retail background. Retail has been changing since the day I've been involved, which is 25 years. But residential is evolving because underneath the roof of a home, we used to just sleep at night. And all of a sudden, we started to shop from our homes. And for a while, folks thought, well, we'll never leave our house, because that's all we can do. We can just shop. Come on. Well, that's not true, because people want an experience and can't eat or drink over the internet. So, you know, the residential asset class and land use has gone through a tremendous amount of change. Sleeping underneath that roof, shopping underneath that roof, and then now working underneath that roof. Well, all of a sudden, we may not have to make commutes. And for those folks going into these urbanized environments, it's been beneficial. Frankly, it's beneficial for the environment for that. So we have a hybrid work circumstance that actually can endure to benefits more suburban communities to agree, because it keeps people local. Instead of a massive commuting pattern. So there's chronic shifts in land uses, again, driven by technologies, the consumer market conditions. So industrial is changing as it's become an online opportunity for us to get goods, and it's a curbside economy. The hospitality business was majorly affected by the pandemic, but guess what? The leisure traveler came back quickly. The business traveler, not as much. And there's a, deep in the report, there's a graph that shows your transient occupancy, the GOT. And its curve is going straight up and down from 2018. And the source of revenue that comes from TC is a strong part of your general fund, something we look at, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But what I found to be fascinating is the slope of that graph, if you will, is very steep, which means your transient occupancy tax has been going up faster than property tax and sales tax and other things. And that's because the leisure traveler is finding places like Dunsmuir and Siskiyou County, for that matter, in this region, to be a place to go for leisure travel. And that the pandemic catalyzed a lot of things in terms of asset classes. And it catalyzed the office environment, as we talked about it, but it really catalyzed the leisure travel as well. Retail, of course, is on a continuum of change, not the least of which is because of the online platforms, but the goods and what consumers want and how quickly they want them and how they can get them is really driven by technology. And I'll talk about that question. Office is causing a tremendous stress in our national economy. Markets with a high amount of office are causing lending institution problems, banking problems, real estate problems, community problems. The tech space of the asset class of office is causing a lot of, is in distress.
Yes, when we were talking about the idea that people are shopping at home now, how does that, is there a direct strategy to kind of how you adjust your retail market to be able to deal with that?
What I believe, because there was a notion headline that everybody probably read years ago. Retail staff. We read about it, it was an apocalypse. And you can blame whoever you want to blame, the consumer, the smartphone, the computer, Amazon, pick your part. But the reality of it is, and I've done lots of presentations on these topics. I said, it's not that retail's dead, but boring retail is dead. The department stores, by the way, are dead. 200,000 square feet of stuff doesn't need to be 200,000 square feet. There's an efficiency, notwithstanding supply chain issues, there's efficiency to those products, and then more commodities, clothing, office supply, sporting goods. They all got impacted negatively by the efficiencies of commodities, but the experience of retail, the touching and feeling of things, the authenticity of retail, the customer service of retail. That's growth. And frankly, I put entertainment and restaurants and experiential retail in a little bit of a similar category. Okay, the hatch. And if you are going to go buy something unique and you want to try something on, and we hope that they're successful, that's where you're going to go. If you want to buy a baseball cap, you buy it online. And so it's the best of both worlds as long as we can try to maximize the strategies. And the point is that they're not a silver bullet, but you have it downtown. Here's the other point about the downtown. We've been to a lot of cities. Some cities would die to have a downtown. Some cities are trying to create a downtown, literally. Some cities have a downtown that's way too big. You did work in State Tree, Santa Barbara. You did work in St. Helena, California. These are places that had major vacancies, that had experienced vacancies like that in decades. So lots of folks are struggling with how do we revitalize a downtown? So once that you're not alone, yet you're full of unique places. But again, back to the point, lots of downtowns are trying to figure out the master plan, what works. And it's about food, it's about authenticity, it's about service, it's about products that are unique, and it's about places.
Thank you.
And I will also say that as part of some of our strategies that we talked about, the marketing, branding, if you will, the marketing.
Thanks.
I don't want to spend too much time here, but the land use trends that we've seen, ironically, the larger retailers, all dating all the way back to 2013. And I put all those presentations together, but dating all the way back to 2013, big retailers were facing shrinkage. They were being challenged by being too big. We're talking about 10 years. So that authenticity and that's the right sizing of retail, our country has too much shopping centers for that. There is. So it's a matter of right sizing, an appropriate type of retail. So fast forward all the way down to the history of innovation became so important in 2021. Convenience, in my opinion, became very, very important in 2022. And these are cumulative. It's not that innovation and convenience aren't really important to retail today. Just look at the drive-through. First of all, cities I've found are loath to like or agree to drive-throughs because it just feels like you never get out of your car and we want walkable communities. And that's fair. But I also think at the same time, we wouldn't have survived the pandemic with COVID without drive-throughs, because that's a lot of people got prescriptions and a lot of people got food, et cetera. So it's a very interesting dynamic. The point about convenience is a lot of these retailers today, they're all about trying to provide convenience because that's what the consumer needs. The last, trend, if you will, dating back to this most recent time frame is technology. We also use data sources bought in our company, like a place of AI, it wants to tell us where we're going, how often we're going there, even what the demographics are. And I'm sorry, that sounds like an invasion of, you know, if you will, some privacy, but we live and die by the smartphones, that if we've got one, technology and artificial intelligence can tell one where you're going and what you're doing, and maybe even how much you're spending. But to me, it's a powerful tool to educate councils and communities about work patterns, retail patterns, spending patterns, demographic patterns. So technology is just a critical part of today's economic development. And I even, you know, I use this phrase, economic development instead of economic development, but I like making it phrases. So anyways, the blending of uses and the evolution of land uses become very, very important. I want to stop from my perspective and turn over the presentation to Bobby, and then we're going to work collaboratively for the rest of this, and obviously open for a dialogue and for questions. But Bobby, you want me to take it over?
Yeah. So I can try to move quickly through some of these slides, really just to, give a sense of the work and the research that we put in, during this assignment. So, we certainly reviewed the history and the background of the city to get a sense of the city's culture and the historic significance of the downtown and the railroad culture that has really formed this city, and we know that it is now really known as this unique small community that also attracts a lot of visitors from outside of the community to visit a lot of these nature destinations nearby. But again, as Ken was alluding to, the population and the workforce losses, as well as some other regional and economic and market conditions have led to some challenges, such as the increasing vacancy and the underutilization of commercial space. Yeah. Another thing that we take a look at are the community's assets. Again, to get a sense of, what are the assets that the community is currently leveraging for activity, but that can also be further leveraged for additional activities, attractions, events, and other economic development efforts. Certainly the historic downtown was the focus, and the charming walkable nature, the historic nature of the downtown. Hedge Creek Falls and Moss Spray Falls being these, incredible natural destinations nearby, as well as Mount Shasta and Castle Craigs. And then, Dunsmuir Station and the railroad heritage and the airport, as well as I-5, really providing this connectivity throughout the region. So we took a look at demographics. Again, looking at some demographic information to get a better sense of your community, as Ken also referred to the Placer AI data, which is anonymized cell phone location data, helps us to see where some of the overnight visitors are coming from. So we see around 70,000 overnight visitors over the past 2 years, representing about $36 million in spending potential. About 70% of those visitors are staying for about 1 to 2 days. And about half of them have household incomes over $90,000. And so we see this as, one component of, here are folks who are coming into your community, what are some ways to, either increase the visitors, some of the visitors who are coming to your community, or hold on to them for longer so that they spend more time in the community, spend more money in the community, which, will then also lead to greater tax revenues for the community. We took a look at some revenue data, which gives us a sense of, again, the transient occupancy taxes and the increases that we've seen. Sales and use taxes, we've seen retail sales in the city increasing over the past 5 years, but not increasing as much as retail sales throughout the county. So again, speaking to some of those retail challenges that are happening in the downtown area. And we also looked at some real estate market data to get a sense of the retail market, the hotel market, and the multifamily market.
This is like a seeing eye test.
Yeah.
I know there were a lot of words on slides. We didn't mean to make this.
I ain't seen nothing yet all night. I haven't seen a thing, so I'm watching you, what you say.
No, we're gonna have to increase fonts, it's just, we just can't help it, but
Yeah.
the reason I said that is because it's funny to see a slide like this that's got 8,000 words on it. I'm just trying to be honest that this is from our report, and the report, which is
We have.
you have to digest, it's your report and it's the community's report to digest. So the point about this is not to make this a challenge, if you will, by having to read a bunch of words on a slide, but it's lots of detail attempted to do, to bring to the table as part of a revitalization strategy, because we don't want there to be just big words, full words on the page, so to speak. So that's the reason why, we have things like this. And so I don't want Bobby you to get caught up in, okay, where do I start?
Yeah, my glasses are good, but they're not that good.
Yeah,
But
but each one of these categorically have a lot of relevance. These are all from your community. These are all from feedback and discussions that we receive. That's why I go back to the invaluable nature of the outreach that we did. It was through in-person, it was through online, it was through telephone calls, it was through Zoom meetings. So we've taken all of that and synthesized it. And that's the point. It's an incredible amount of feedback. And it's very good feedback. I don't care if it's negative or positive. It's just important feedback so that we know what the community is saying about strengths, challenges, and opportunities.
And
you can go through just the bolded highlights.
yeah, I can just kind of go through some of the highlights. Again, from a lot of the stakeholder outreach, we heard again and again, some of the key strengths being the accessibility and the infrastructure in the city, the I-5 and the airport and the station bringing some connectivity there, the natural and cultural assets being key, all of the different natural destinations, the Pacific Coast Trail that runs through the area, the community cultures, the creative atmosphere, the unique small businesses, the walkable, pleasant, historic, friendly downtown area. We walked it when we got into town here this afternoon, and it's such a nice, unique, special downtown area. Tourism and hospitality, driven by the natural attractions and driven by the city's location on the I-5 corridor, and then infrastructure investment that has been occurring over the past few years. Challenges, the downtown development, the vacancy, some maintenance issues, some retail voids. We heard from a number of folks, key retail categories that are missing in the area that locals need. Open hours and seasonality being challenges, and businesses needing investment, and then that balance again between the needs of the residents and serving, some visitor uses as well. Infrastructure and beautification needed to, make some improvements that are needed downtown. Some economic challenges that, again, Ken was alluding to earlier. Workforce challenges of bringing workers into the community and workers here commuting out, property expectations, some high value expectations, some high maintenance costs, and then that leading to some vacancy and some maintenance issues. And then some other challenges related to tourism, Union Pacific and some of the challenges that puts on the railroad-based tourism that the city has historically taken part in. And then, really hearing about the opportunities from the community, the ideas, improving pedestrian access and outdoor amenities and gathering spaces downtown, really focusing on some key catalytic projects and properties, downtown retail, expanding that kind of outdoor dining and, providing services for Pacific Crest Trail users, helping the businesses downtown promote their businesses and support their operations. Again, trying to, find ways to serve some of that recreation and tourism that brings visitors and their spending into the community, and then providing, better small business support to help small businesses thrive in the downtown area. And so I'll kind of quickly move through some of the key opportunity areas. Again, the downtown, the key strengths being that walkable downtown environment and this historic character. A historic character that I think, as Ken was saying, a lot of cities are trying to create this type of historic, walkable, livable downtown area, and you folks have it. And the opportunities being streetscape improvements, outdoor amenities and dining and historic building reuse to really, revitalize the downtown area. Some of the other opportunity areas that we looked outside of the downtown was that Cave Springs Hotel area because of some of the investment that's been happening on the property and some of the retail opportunities nearby. The airport area because of some opportunity sites that have, good accessibility to the freeway. And then the former motel property that's along the freeway, that being, having such great I-5 visibility, currently it's vacant, but it's clearly a very prominent spot and can really could be a good opportunity for rehab or redevelopment. And so the three main categories that I think we kind of settled on when we're thinking about the categories of economic development activities centered around the natural assets, the I-5 corridor, and then the historic downtown and the rail assets. And again, we go into greater detail in our full report. I'm not going to read this whole slide, but here's kind of an overview of some of the strategies we're looking at. Number one, first and foremost, being improving that downtown business environment. A key part of that being infrastructure and amenities, improving the built environment, improving the streetscape, business facades, landscaping, to boost the appeal and drive further investment downtown. The business mix, diversifying that business mix to enrich the experience of being downtown and utilizing some of the scenic spaces nearby. I think a lot of the focus too is on some of the priority properties, some of those catalytic properties. I think of the Four Corners, the Travelers Hotel, the bank building, the vacant hotel across the street, and then the theater and some of the adjoining properties. Those really being some of the key catalytic sites in the downtown area, and finding ways to unlock projects on. Ideally all four of those corners can really help to unlock the rest of the street, and enhancing public spaces, pedestrian spaces, building off of that walkability, with pedestrian spaces, plazas, and a lively outdoor atmosphere. Leveraging natural tourism, recreation, and other kind of tourism through, building off of those natural assets, the Pacific Crest Trail, enhancing services to, to the hikers that serve them. The I-5 corridor, boosting some of that visibility to pull travelers off of the corridor and into the downtown area, and events and activities being a key component to, generating activity, bringing people together in the community, as well as bringing people from outside of the community in, and really creating that vibrancy. Leveraging some of the rail recreation and tourism activities, really means working with some external stakeholders like Union Pacific, like Amtrak, like the state, and some other rail partners to see what kind of rail tourism opportunities there are here in Dunsmuir. but still building off of that rail history as well, because it really does add this unique character to visitors. And you know, small business assistance and entrepreneurship being so key to help small businesses thrive, to you know, connect them with the services that they need to grow, and really leveraging some of the existing programs and partnerships that the city has with a number of different organizations, including the EDC, the Chamber of Commerce, and other organizations. And then again, workforce development, helping to, you know, help with worker training, help connect workers and employers and schools and other organizations, building those networks, and then addressing barriers to worker readiness. And so, you know, again, in our full report, we go into greater detail on each of these areas, but then that really leads to some key action items. And again, this just summarizes the action items, and you know, we have sub action items for each of these, for investing in infrastructure, improving the built environment, you know, attracting private investment, pursuing partnerships and collaborating with other local groups, pursuing additional grant funds. You know, these are all things that the city is currently working on, but you know, we're trying to add some information and some ideas for further actions to further advance these goals. Utilizing, oh, sure.
Yeah, the question I have is, we're getting to the action part of it, and I'm wondering, between you all and us all, where does that split come? Are you giving us a strategy and we go off and do it, or is there you reaching out and helping us identify and things like that? How much is this a partnership, and how much of this is just handing it off to us?
I would say the simplest answer is partnership, and I was going to get into some of the next steps. It's a very good question. But the notion of our role, which in this case, and in ideally no cases, do we want to just say, here's a report, good luck? That's why I said earlier, it's really about implementation. It's about trying to take action items. So we're here to collaborate with the city. And the other part of what this says is there's a lot of resources that are going to be required to do all of these things. You know, human resources, financial resources for that. We're trying to pursue financial resources, but it takes some financial resources.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a giant economic development department. Some cities do, some cities don't. So it's a way to try to be efficient about that. But our role for you wants to be for you to lean on us, so to speak, and for us to collaborate.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go to the next steps. I think it's a good segue.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm going to wrap this up, but
Yeah. There you go.
So it's continued community engagement, which is I consider this part of that process in terms of next steps of implementation, building the partnerships, which Bobby mentioned. If we had to go make phone calls tomorrow, you know, have a conversation with Amtrak, have a conversation with UP. If that makes sense, we'll go do that. Business expansion, attraction, retention for the downtown, outreach to hotels, outreach to retail, outreach to, you know, residential developers. It's collaborating with you all. The airport area has opportunities. If that land can be leveraged and utilized in a fashion where businesses can come, whether it's, you know, hospitality, travel related businesses, industrial related businesses.
Amazon.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about, we drove south. You come to the airport first. And then what's there? You know, so there's opportunity within those land. You don't control all the land, but you control some of it. And so that's something you can actually take some action on potentially. And then frankly, as you come down the freeway, the next thing you see is a boarded up hotel on the left. You gotta do something about that. We want to do something about that. We want to try to help change that. Because that's image, branding, marketing, an incredible opportunity for, you know, which you're in those two, the zone of those two exits. To be able to say, hey, you're in Dunsmuir. So the image, if you will, that I think of it as you're coming south, north, as you're coming south, it's a different viewpoint than what you're doing. Anyways, infrastructure becomes very, very important. And I think you guys have been very successful from what we can tell as we've been working with Justin on funding for lots of major infrastructure. And that's mission critical because I consider that part of the public-private partnership. When you're gonna go try to get private investment and they say your freeway doesn't work, your water system doesn't work, you know, that's a problem. Your broadband or Wi-Fi, you know, isn't as significant. Well, you have a lot of that infrastructure that you're either working on as we speak or that's been invested. To me, that's the public sector doing the public part of the public-private partnership. And then property owner collaboration. Now, I know we've talked a lot about major property owners or property that's sitting fallow for that matter, or property that isn't at its highest misuse. It's not a singular formula. It's a function of motivation of property owners. It's a function in market conditions and the demand. It's a function of, again, all of it holistically, because we're looking at this as not just, this is a retail revitalization plan, I'm gonna call 50 retailers. This has to be looked at holistically. So there needs to be all that collaboration and project shaping. And so each of those have steps that are required. And like I say, we're in the business to collaborate. So I think we'll leave it there. Hopefully that wasn't too long, but, and you know, I think it's time to engage. Thank you.
Right, well, if everyone wants to kind of turn around. Again, and then we'll give a minute here.
No. Other slides, but.
Yeah.
I should thank my eye doctor, my optometrist. I could read a lot of that.
Peter.
I was saying I should thank my optometrist. I could read quite a bit of that after my, yeah, without any glasses. Yeah, I do too.
So I have a feeling there's gonna be a decent amount of the public who wants to ask questions tonight. So what I'm gonna ask all of us is to keep our council questions fairly short before we go into public comment. And really try to ask, since we'll have a good time for discussion and more questions after public comment. But what I would like is if anyone has any questions that they really feel like should be asked before public comment, just to kind of bring things into people's minds or bring attention to things, or maybe get people thinking about certain things in the audience. Try it. If you have any questions along those lines, now's a good time to ask them. And then anything else, let's wait till after public comment, so that way we can hear from public.
The one question I have is, and this gets back to the relationship. The one thing that I think it's out two of our big problems, and it's a straightforward get. It's not like trying to figure it all out. If we could find some trail person that would like to come into town, pick up one of our buildings that's empty and put in a laundromat / trail place, that would solve a problem of not having a laundromat. And at the same time, we have Pacific Crest Trail. So I've been thinking for weeks about the idea. It's a simple ask. Reach out, find somebody out there who might like to do that wherever they are. Say we got a beautiful town, because that could make a big difference if we could get the Pacific Crest Trail folks when they come off of the stage to stop in town and buy things. And that's where it all comes down to. So that's a challenge I have, because I think that would be a straightforward get, maybe not easy, but straightforward. Thank you.
Any other questions before we public comment?
Just have a quick procedural question. So I did not have enough time to go through the report before tonight. And so there are probably members of the public who are just seeing this for the first time. What is the opportunity to follow up with additional questions or input to your firm as part of the process?
I think we are flexible.
Okay.
And we're your consultant. So I appreciate that you have not had that time. So we want this to be, that's why I said, I think this is part of a continuum. I think the action item was going to be to adopt the plan. But if there needs to be more review and discussion, with us.
Thank you.
Better be.
Any other council questions? All right, with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Anyone who has something that they'd like to speak on for this item may go up to the podium. They will have the same rules as regular public comment, 3 minutes. Please state your name and address at the beginning for the record. And then what I will just do here, there's a little difference, is after every member of the public speaks, you know, due to the Brown Act, we really can't have a dialogue. But after members of the public speaks and your time is up, we will allow Cosmo to answer any questions before the next person comes up. So with that, whoever would like to come up to the podium, please do so. And I do ask that we focus on, or raise your hand on Zoom. And I do ask that we focus all comments and discussion to this item. So, all right, with that, whoever would like to come up first, go right ahead.
Banner 116, well, playing in that here. First, I'd like to just suggest maybe having some print copies of this work for people who like to have documents in hand. And I did see it online, but it's just really nice to have it on hand, and that would be something for future. Anyway, I think Ken hit on something where he said the silver bullet, and with reports like this, you really expect to get the silver bullet. Here's the answers. Well, that's not going to happen. And I think what we really have to balance with a report like this is between something that is so general that it's meaningless and something that's so specific and pie in the sky and dreamy that it's not going to happen. And I do believe that the consultants did a good balance between the two of finding realistic projects and clear strategies and really helping to the next step. So I was happy to hear the consultants say that they will be there for the next step, because I think if they just hand the report to us, we're not going to be able to take it on our own. That there's too many moving parts, too many factors. I think there's a lot of good information there, a lot of good potential strategies, a lot of good people in the community that are more than willing to get involved and to help folks it down. But I do think it really is going to need some help, and it'd be great. And it's great to hear the consultants say that they are available to help with that next step. So look forward to the next step of the process.
Thank you very much. All right, whoever would like to go next.
Still Peter Art, still the same address. I would like to compliment possible on doing a very fine job. And I think the threshold issue is when you look at the very, very brief staff report, it is entitled Downtown Revitalization Plan, as is parts of the report. But in fact, the downtown is not inclusive of the airport. The downtown is not inclusive of the Pacific Crest Trail. The downtown is not inclusive of Osprey Falls. So is that an intentional slicing of the breadth of our revitalization plan? Or do you not have, maybe it was the balance of the grant, I don't know. But if you're only going to look at downtown, you're missing a huge part of opportunities inherent in this exercise. I really am disappointed in the staff report, because its options are to accept and approve the plan, ask for revisions, do not approve. It commits the city to absolutely nothing. So you have 5 strategies. You have 9 action items. You have 6 implementation next steps. Are you going to do some of them? Are you going to do none of them? Are you going to do them this year? Are you going to do them next year? I listened patiently to Council Member Deutsch talking about his various activities with the transit plan. The last thing we need is a 4th foundation grant for building Dunsmuir's future. What we need is the city to concentrate on the work that Cosmont has done. Why wouldn't the airport committee go ahead and deal with one of the biggest strategies in this report, which is the airport? The finance committee, the airport committee, the independent auditor, this is a big issue. To the extent the airport fails, it redounds to the general fund. Here's this huge potential for all sorts of different things. And when's the last time the airport committee met?
30 seconds.
So, I would like to recommend that the city focus on the low hanging fruit in the 5 strategies, 9 action items, and 6 implementation steps. And that this stay on the agenda until all of you have had a chance to read the thing. I don't think any of you have read the whole report. I hadn't paid for it, but I did spend 4 hours reading it between yesterday and today.
Thank you, Peter.
Very good.
Mayor, do you mind if? Is this working? Do you mind if I comment on that? So the idea wasn't to bring the report forward and just and come with all the solutions, right? I wanted Cosmont to be able to present it to the community. This is the community's report. It's not my report. I'm not going to make all the recommendations. What I want to do is bring this to the council and talk to them. And then how are we going to engage each of these strategies and take that back to the community and establish a plan, right? And so ultimately, I'm allowing Cosmont to bring it forward as they've done all the majority of the work. And now it's our turn. Okay, how are we going to address that? And so I didn't bring any recommendations forward because it's not just me. It's everybody that I want to have participate in that. So I just want to clarify.
Thank you. All right. Whoever's next.
Eight, 678 South First Street. I'm not sure if this pertains totally, but I'm on the school board for the high school. We're implementing a job shadowing program where students can come to businesses and learn their what makes them work. So we are trying to do that now. And also,
I 4200 Pinewood Drive. I could have a couple of questions. I don't know how much help you guys are going to be around to give us. That seems kind of like maybe if we ask for it, maybe they're available for some things or other. But I think our biggest need is going to be well, we're going to need people to implement this. It seems like our city staff is small enough for work. I just can't imagine them just diving into this, any one of these things really. Maybe just some amateur volunteers perhaps doing this or that. But funding seems like the biggest need. So what kind of help will you guys give us as far as finding funding for all these various rehabs or investments?
Yeah, well, let me try to address that. I think first I'd like to say that, and Dustin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our agreement with the city, the reason the answer is clear, it calls for us to play a role in implementation. And so the budget and the scope have that in there. If they didn't, then we would have a discussion about how can we continue to help? Because again, our goal is to try to help implement. So I think and I understand the notion of the staff being challenged in terms of time and resources, et cetera. The second part about how do we go after funding, I mean, it's interesting because there's tax increment districts. Tax increment districts need assessed value to be created. And I think the county had an opportunity to review that, to take advantage of tax increment. If there's not enough new tax increment or new assessed value or new development, then those districts don't work very well. are there districts, special districts that can be created to help finance, you know, the CRD, which is a similar concept, but it's focused on resiliency. And it's a climate resilience district geared toward climate events and things like that, floods and fires, et cetera. Well, that might be something that could be created as a funding strategy. Grants. Well, districts can take 6 months to a year to create, so they take time. But I think there's a distinction between the things we can do and steps we can take in the short term and the tools that some of which we recommended or we talk about or we're going to pursue, they take time. They just take time. And so we have to start the seed planting process now or start the steps and prioritize those in order to bring them to fruition because they're not going to happen overnight. There's other funding sources, grant dollars for that matter. Grants, as you probably know, they come in certain application cycles. So they're going to be, an NOA is going to go out, it's going to be April and they're going to be due in June and you may or may not win or lose. Frankly, one of the challenges to different grants today and even low-income housing tax credits for affordable housing, it's all being challenged at the state level because of the state budget deficit. So the other issue is the macro economy, because we've got a lot of macro issues that we're facing in our economy and our state's budget is not going to be a real forthcoming with a lot of extra grants. So that might mean the grant program won't work in the short term, but it could work in the midterm or the longer term. So I think it's understanding a financing strategy to kind of figure out which one of these are priorities. Somebody said low-hanging fruit. Figure out what's low-hanging fruit so that we can go after some of that and then work together on it. But it won't happen overnight.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Could I also just clarify, if people aren't aware of it, we're here tonight because the city's been working for years and got a CDBG grant to do downtown revitalization, economic development. Cosmont is the consultant we selected to help us develop that. I think it's a 3-year commitment. So we do have that part taken care of. That's why funding for this project isn't immediately a concern, but certainly it is a central question going forward to get anything else done.
And on that note, out of that 3-year commitment, how far into that time period are we?
We're
1 year?
7-8 months, right?
7 months.
7-8 months. So just for the members of the public,
I think we
we're not
started
even a third of the way through that 3-year. Yeah, period. All right, whoever would like to go next, please approach the podium.
Bobby Malenga, 5837 5855 Dunsmuir. I have a question. With everything that we've talked about today and how long this is going to take, are there any emergency ordinances that the council could do in the meantime while all this gets figured out so that we don't lose more businesses in this town? Seeing that within the last year we lost Taste of Caribbean, we just lost Cafe. Is there anything they can do that can kind of decrease the barrier to entry to owning a business in this town or kind of help the businesses we currently have survive while we wait 5 or 10 years to figure all this stuff out?
Okay. So I know, just to go into that question for a second, I know that's a big part of the ordinance review committee that we just started, is to go over some of these old and outdated ordinances or that need to be changed. So that is a process that's actively ongoing right now.
I think the other thing, just very quick, and the consultants can maybe touch on that fact as well, is what you've seen work for quick solutions to help with business retention. So I'll throw that back at you. One of the other things to just kind of let the general public know, we don't necessarily keep businesses open with ordinances. Again, there are abilities to have programs and assistance. And so that's why I think it'd be more appropriate for Cosmont to talk about those programs and assistance, but just having an emergency ordinance doesn't necessarily keep a business open, but you can maybe speak to some of the other strategies that you have.
Like lower permit.
Yeah, I'll let, because I know you and I talked, Bobby. So one of the things that, and it was Dave brought it up early on in the meeting, was the $3,000 fee to go through the commission to establish, just to paint your building, right? It's something I've heard a couple of times in the downtown historic district, and I think we put some of our own barriers in place without streamlined solutions that are causing people, you know, harm, and not necessarily harm, but extra dollars, right? And in order to get, you know, so some of the things like that is what I want to bring forward to the committee for code enforcement, or not code enforcement, but the code review committee. Such as maybe we establish a palette of colors that's available that are administered by staff instead of having to go through a process, right? Because then that prevents the $3,000, you know, the planning commission fee plus the historic review commission fee of $3,000, which is really excessive for somebody to go put $1,000 paint job on the front.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I think Bobby's trying to get at, is those kind of things.
Which is, as I said, some of the first things that are gonna be tackled in that ordinance review committee, which is starting to meet.
We should be trying to help the businesses survive and, you know, prosper, not hindering them from doing anything or taxing them to death to where they want to leave.
I would just add, I mean, I think you're covering the topic. It's a very important topic. As we're doing work for other cities, we take a look at permitting costs sometimes. We're not so in the weeds, but there's permitting costs, there's permitting timing, there's entitlement timing. All of that I kind of put into a broad category, if you will, of, call it sort of business friendliness, in so much as the high cost of doing business for a new business to come in, for, or even existing business to stay, is something cities want to take a close look at, for the reasons that have been just discussed. Further beyond that, we were just with another city. We end up doing research on incentives. So it's even beyond the idea of, well, make it easy to get a permit. Okay, great. That's business friendly, but what are ways that there can be actual incentives? Now, maybe that's a fee deferral or a fee credit or a waiver of fees, or, you know, an arrangement with businesses, and that might help them ramp up. Cities can only do so much though, because you've also got the business, the landlord, the market, the consumer, the city. So, you know, I want to make sure that, again, I think things do need to be understood holistically, but what can the city do on their part? And that's why I say, take a close look at those costs, processes, and then even incentives.
All right. Okay. Whoever's next, please come to the podium.
Ernie Lawson, 307 South Second. Two comments and a question. One is, I totally agree with the comment my neighbor made about there should be some paper copies, whether it be one at the library or at the York City Hall, so that people have access to it. And at the mixer next month at the chamber, we're going to have speakers specifically talk about taking welcoming PTT hikers and what can be done. So that's been lined up.
Great.
A question, I know that Cisco Arts Museum, we've got money from the city for promoting the second Saturday events. And I'm curious, the comment of one of the slides was that 9% or whatever visitors from the Bay Area are in Sacramento. Is there a further breakdown on that? Because I would love to see that for advertising purposes.
Yeah, further in the report, we have a breakdown by those kind of larger metro areas as well as by individual cities. So you can see, you know, some of those specific cities in the area and the visitors that come from these cities.
Okay, good.
And if I can just add to that, frankly, the 49%, what I thought was also fascinating and positive was the demographics or the median income of that number of folks that are coming from somewhere else was more than double of median income locally. And so that means, again, they're coming in with high dollars to enjoy, you know, your natural assets and amenities. So that's a positive.
And the same with the PCT hikers, people that take 4 months out living to hike a trail are not poor people.
That's what we just talked about earlier today.
All right, whoever's next, please come up to the podium.
Resident here for about 36 years. I just have a quick question. About 36 years ago, there was a revitalization program put on the table and they voted it down. And Williams and a couple other small towns, they went to try them, in those places, it doesn't work. Do you guys really look into the history? I mean, at railroad days used to be 20,000 people, now it's like 20. Things like that. Why do we have some of these new businesses come and they're here and they start really, really hard and then boom, they're gone? Do you guys look into why they fail? You know, you guys are gonna help us not make that fail anymore. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no pressure, right? It's yeah, but it's an excellent point. The answer is yes. Because we have to understand why things have changed. We actually had some case studies that we put into the report. One of them, it was like successes of other examples of other cities. I'm going to come back to Dunsmuir, but there were some examples of other cities and where there's some case studies where there can be some successes where they did things right or what have you. And then there was a failure, a description of something that didn't work. And to your point about the metrics of railroad days and how many people are coming to it, we also recognize that if that isn't the thing that your community needs, because the consumers changed and the times have changed, and the railroad history can only do, in my mind anyways, so much, right? It's incredible. But if it isn't what a millennial wants today, and that's who you're trying to get, because there's 80 million of them spending $750 million, and that's what we want, or we want the $90,000 median income person. And they want to come here because you have incredible falls and trails. We got to pivot. We have to pivot.
Push buttons, TV and do their electronic.
I think there's lots of folks that want to push a button and do their electronic things, including my 19-year-old son. But I think there was also lots of people that we've been discussing that want to come and figure out nature. And that's a big attraction that you have. And that nobody can take that away. Nobody can take that away from you. So part of it is also, I think, and we have to know where we've been, because it's you have that great history, that institutional knowledge. If we know where we've been, then maybe what we want to do is market it differently, promote it differently, think about it differently, analyze it differently, and see if we can find the consumer that finds that important to them. And if it isn't, then let's not keep beating our heads against the wall and try to pivot to what works. But you have certain assets that I think are leverageable. And that's just what we want to try to focus on. You know, if you look at the Amtrak ridership, we have that in our report too. It's way down. And so it's the same thing. It's like, yes, we want to leverage maybe the rail line, but at some point, you know, I don't know if folks are necessarily taking that as a means by which to come into town or not. So we don't want to, you know, waste time on certain things that don't have a return on investment.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the room who'd like to come up and make a comment this evening? All right, if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment on this item for this evening and move into council discussion.
Can I start?
You may.
Because I haven't had a time to read through everything. I really would like to make two motions tonight. One is to direct staff to actually print 2 copies to have at City Hall and the library, so that if people do want to read the paper copies, to have that available. It's something we typically do with a lot of other projects that require that type of thing, especially when we go through CEQA, which is California Environmental Quality Act. And then to also advertise the availability of the study and garner a little bit more interest. Although this is a really great turnout for this, I'm really happy to have everybody here. We want to continue to hear from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Brown.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Those motions.
And so the other thing too is I'd like to continue this item to the first April meeting if possible. That gives about 30 days for everybody to take a look at it, ask any questions. And if there's an ability to get your contact information or However, if we can do like a Google form for submitting comments or anything like that. Just coming off of our active transportation plan, we did a really big public outreach for that, and it was pretty successful in terms of getting a lot of really good input. And I just would really like to see that for this document as well. Because again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we're getting all of the information in there. And especially for, business owners who are having issues with the codes. What specifically are we having issues with? I think that's a big thing we need to know specifically to be able to address that. So those are the motions I'm going to propose for tonight, but I also don't want to like take away from any other council members having discussion with the consultants.
I'll second both of those, make it quick.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah, Tony?
You can comment.
Yeah, on your
That's
Yeah,
my intent. So I just want to let everyone in the room know and on Zoom that like I would like to have additional time and that we would like to push this to a future meeting so that we give ample time for it.
Well, I completely concur with don't make any decisions tonight. It's just been too new to really fully review. Thankfully, it's intricate and detailed enough. I think that was a concern of a lot of the community, that it would be more of a copy and paste boilerplate. But I think if we have maybe a month or so to be able to review this, get the word out there in the community, we'll get much more detailed responses on it and maybe start parsing down, okay, what is achievable for us as a community? What do we really feel passionately about based on these recommendations that we can actually achieve? Because our council is very much a go-getter city council. You ask us to tell us what our goals and focuses are for each year, and we'll give you a list 300 items long. But when everything's your priority, nothing is by default because you're just committing everywhere. So I think it'd be a wonderful exercise to do that in the future. I would love to see, maybe it doesn't have to be next first council meeting in April. I would love to see us have more of a town hall meeting to interact with all the stakeholders involved, less formal, less council-like, to celebrate that we have this plan, but then to ask the very real questions. Okay, there's these recommendations. Which ones do you guys want to focus on? Which do you not? And maybe have some input from, our consultants as to how we can step forward on that. So I'd propose maybe a little bit more time, maybe early.
First meeting in May.
Yeah, maybe first meeting in, well, it doesn't have to be a city council meeting, but have a meeting in May.
At least bring this item back for council. Excuse me. I think it's important to have a deadline for council decision, just so that we keep timely, because again, this can get lost in the fray with 9,000 things that we do.
Well, how about we do second in April to give ourselves,
I won't be here that day.
okay.
I'll be in Minneapolis.
All right, first in May, but I'd like to, put posters around town, make this a very large event.
I will not be here the first one in May.
Okay.
Well, we'll figure out a date. We'll continue it to a future meeting with at least 30 days of review.
But we do need to give enough time for everybody who wants to be involved to have the opportunity to review the plan and submit comments in advance. I would be in favor.
My thought on that is that it's really at least got to be a two-step process. We come back after having all read it and then kind of get a sense of where we all fit in. And then it's another one to actually sit down and say, what are we going to do and how do we do it? So I think it's a 2 or 3 meeting thing down the line, conversation going on over a period.
Yeah, I can amend my motion to just be continued to a future meeting.
Yeah, I'll amend my second.
All right, the motion has been.
Well, I kind of what I was thinking, I kind of like Bruce's thought process and, Councilmember Brian and I did speak before the meeting, and I think it's important to adopt the plan. So that way, when we go into the engagement process, like Councilmember Brian mentioned, then well, here's the strategies, right? We've received our comments and this is the strategies. And then now we're going to implement the strategies and how are we going to prioritize which ones are first? So I think it's important to set a deadline, as Councilmember Lucchese had mentioned, but I think it's also important to set the town hall kind of prospect, for that,
So
maybe
then
early
I'll
May.
get back to my original motion, which is bring this back at the first meeting in April for adoption.
I'll amend it again.
All right,
I'm amending kind of guy.
it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
This doesn't require a roll call.
No.
There's no expense.
We spent that money a long time ago.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank the two of you for coming.
Yeah,
So much.
you guys got cards?
Yeah.
We'd all probably love one.
No problem. And also, as it's already been said a few times, thank you for not just putting out a boilerplate plan. I know I was, Vice Mayor Ryan said that's one thing I heard from a lot of people. It was a big concern, and we all really appreciate the effort that was put into this.
No, thank you. It's a
Salute you.
pleasure, frankly, and an honor. And how would one get more of the data that you guys use to collect some of this stuff, particularly with like the, kind of going off one of the public commenters, visitors to town? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that maybe local eyes might recognize as patterns that might help us,
Yeah.
either in seeking out partners, because
Jason Young at EDC has that, and so if you ever want anything, you can just ask him.
I've asked him for years. I want
Oh,
raw
oh.
data, so
Right,
we can
okay.
look at it and see what we find, not
Okay.
one.
We can provide some raw data. We can also, maybe there's tweaks to
Mhm.
patterns that someone wants to look at.
Yeah.
Cause it's a very real-time
Mhm.
resource.
Yeah.
And so, we've done things where it's like, how successful is a certain set of events in a certain part of the city?
Yeah.
Subject to data availability. Anyways, we can customize some of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 11, new business, which, since we knew this was gonna be a long, old business item, we don't have any new business tonight. So we'll move on to item number 12, future agenda items, and I know you have at least one or two.
I have two.
So one of the things that came out of our special meeting on Tuesday was a recommendation to place on a future agenda item, a request for proposal to go out for a third-party human resources consultant. And so I'd like to formally request that gets put on the future agenda items. We felt it was important during the closed session to, as the three members who were available during that closed session, that we should start to improve our human resources aspect of our operations. And so we should go out for RFP for third party consultant. So we'd like to bring that RFP back at a future meeting for council consideration and for putting that out to solicit responses for a consultant.
Right. And then you mentioned something earlier about the library.
Yeah, we have that already, I believe, or I had requested it a while back. Just in reference to the fact that the county is no longer funding the library very much, if at all. And so I'm just working on that with Dustin to bring that back and be a little bit more formalized. So that was one I had requested a while back.
Councilmember Doak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, two things. I know we're getting ready to have the hotspots come live sometime in the near future.
They are live.
Well, I mean, in terms of letting the world know and getting a page together. So what I'd like to do is pursue the idea with the EDC of seeing if they could work out the landing page, and then get the QR code so we could start getting it out to the restaurants and et cetera. So, I mean, we want to have that in place before Memorial Day. So when the tourists start coming, we've got that in place with the landing page, QR codes and everything. And then the other thing is, not so much an immediate agenda item, but I would like to follow up on the plan that had been put in place back in 2014 for a special historic district. I'd like to take a look at that if we can find that information, and I'd like to see if I could get some stir and motion going on at it.
Okay, sounds good. In terms of the downtown Wi-Fi, maybe you and I can chat a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that needs to be an agenda item or just something that we can.
It could be some background.
Implement. But regardless, we'll work on it.
Yeah, the big thing that I think is really critical is that I think we have an opportunity by using advertising on that landing page to be able to pay for the hotspots themselves. So I'd like to, have somebody that could go out and get advertising.
Definitely. Yeah, let's you and
I will.
chat about that a little bit, and then we'll see how best to make that happen.
Yes, sir.
Right, and with that, is there anything else?
Make motion to adjourn.
All right, seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, there's no question. That's just.